Hello and welcome to video number 13 of our web developing tutorials. In this video we're going to cover the introductory to MySQL, and with that we're going to learn a little bit about databases and how they're used. But through all this you need to understand that designing your database is crucial to the development of a good data driven website, and you need to spend a lot of time looking at MySQL or whatever database engine you choose to use. You also need to read a little bit about database design best you can. I'm going to try to give you some quick pointers on it, but know that database design is something that takes a little bit of thought, and you should spend a lot of time designing your database to work with your site correctly. So we're going to start out by learning the MySQL command line a little bit. To get to the MySQL command line, let's go to CMD, or just click your start button and in search programs do CMD, and we're going to start up a command line, a Windows command line. I'm just going to drag us down a little bit so that we can make a little bit more room, and we'll change directory, cd space backslash examp or XAMPP backslash MySQL backslash bin. Hit enter, and we'll be in the MySQL binary files, which if you do a directory on that, you'll see contains a lot of executable files. It lets you access MySQL in different ways. But the MySQL command line is mysql.exe. We can either type mysql.exe or we can just type MySQL. We'll put a dash u and then our user, which that's what the dash u stands for, is a root, and you don't put a space after that. And we don't put a space after the dash u before you put the root. You just put dash u root and then dash p to prompt for a password. We hit enter and it's going to prompt us for a password. I'm going to put the root pass that I created in a previous video. So we now have access to the MySQL command line, and one of the things we're going to do is we're going to show the databases that are available, and we hit a semicolon at the end. That every SQL statement ends in a semicolon. We got a list of databases, and I'm going to use the MySQL database for right now. I'm going to show you a little bit about tables, but the MySQL database that's inside of that MySQL it contains information about your SQL database server. You won't be using that probably ever. You won't use it ever for any of your apps, but I'm going to just use it to show how tables look and how to use the command line a little bit more. So we use MySQL with and then put a semicolon at the end and hit enter. And that changes us to that database. So the context that we're in right now is of that database itself, none of the others. I'm going to show the tables in that database. A semicolon on the end, and it's giving us a list of all the tables that are in that database. So you've learned how to connect to the MySQL database, you've learned how to use a database, and you have learned how to show tables. So now let's look at some of the information in those tables. We're just going to describe a table, which is DESC, and we're going to describe the help topic table. We can find out a little bit about it. We hit a semicolon in, hit enter. So databases are made of fields and rows. The field name is listed here to the left. Now you got the help topic ID, and this is the type. It's an integer of length 10. It's an integer with up to 10 digits in length. It's unsigned, which means that it's never a negative. Can't be null. This is a primary key. It has a null default, and there's no extras. Each one of these field names or fields has a descriptor or name, which is the field itself in this table. It's got a type, and then we've got some other information about it anyway. So this name is a character type of 64 length. That means the name of each entry in this table can only be 64 characters long. And then it's got a help category ID, which is a foreign key probably to another to this table up here. Help category. It's a small int of 5 in length, and it's unsigned. And then we have a description, which is a text type, and we have an example, which is a text type. We have a URL, which is a character type of 128 in digits in length. So I just want to look at one of the records in this table. So I'm going to select everything, which is the asterisk from help topic where one. We'll just, actually we don't have to put that there, we're true, so we don't need to put that, but select everything from the help topic, limit 1, and we're just going to put a semicolon there, and that gives us one of the records. And we see this, the record's got a lot of lines in it, but that is really just lines separating different things, and we can't look at that very well inside of here without changing the properties of this window and giving it a width of more than 80 characters, but I'm not going to mess with any of that. What I want to show you really is how you can look at this data from inside my PHP MyAdmin a little bit better. So let's just close this window, but that gives you an idea of you can do all the commands that we're going to learn from the command line inside SQL, inside MySQL. So let's close that. So we've pulled up, I'm just going to pull it up again, our localhost / PHP MyAdmin, which points to the PHP MyAdmin install on XAMPP, and we're going to log in with our root pass that we created, and we have a GUI front end for MySQL pretty much right here. You see their tables are still all the same. We still have that MySQL table, so let's look at that MySQL table. Now we have all these, or sorry, MySQL database, I should say. I'm sorry, MySQL database, and it has a bunch of different tables, and the table we were looking at was the help topic. Clicking on that gives you a listing of all the records that's in that table. You got the help topic ID of 0, name, min, help category ID is 16, and it's got a description. Like I said, this is just information for the MySQL database engine itself. We can also look at the structure of this database here, or this table here, sorry. The structure gives us the same type of information that we got from the describe command. It gives us an easier way to navigate things anyway, and we can look at each one of these. We can change them. We can go to change. We could change something about that. We could change it to an integer value longer than 10. We won't mess with that. Don't mess with that one. So we can look through our data there now. You can just see how you look through data. So let's go click on the home button, and we're going to create a new database. So we go to databases, and we're just going to type a database called WebDev1, and we don't have to set the collation, but I'm just going to go ahead and change it to UTF general for right now and create it. And we've created a database. Now it shows up over here in our list of databases. There's no tables in this, so let's create like a user table, and we're just going to give it 3 columns for right now. Hit go, and the user table, we're going to have an ID column, we're going to have a name, and then we're going to have, let's just say age, and this ID is going to have an integer value 11 length. It's we just leave that none. We have the attributes of unsigned, and we hit a primary key, and we're going to auto increment it. Now the name is going to be a variable character. We're going to say 64 in length, 64 digits in length, and we can leave everything the way it is. The age, we'll just leave it to be an integer, and we'll have a max length of 3 there. So we've got that. So let's hit go, and we save that table. Just save it to make sure. So we saved it. So we now have a user table. There's nothing in it. User table has nothing in it. We have a structure. So let's insert some data to it. And we don't have to put an ID here because it's auto incremented. Let's put a name. Let's put Randy, and age 34. And let's put Randy, which is my wife, and she's 33. We just insert as new row and hit go. So now our users table has 2 records in it, ID 1, ID 2, Randy, Brandy, age 34 and 33. So we have data saved. We could also look at that real quick. Let's go back to the MySQL command line, look at it from there. And so we'll show table or show databases. And we're going to use WebDev1, and then we're going to show tables, and we got the user table, so let's go ahead and select asterisk from user, and that gives us our data. So we have data in there. So that's how you create a database. That's how you put data into it. That's how we use PHP MyAdmin for doing those things. There's a lot of different data types. It's good to use the right data type so that you're not using too much space, storage space. If you want to just use just enough to encapsulate your most extreme scenario for the data, whatever's going to be in there. So if, for instance, if you had a first name field, most first names are less than, say, 32 characters long. It's very rare that you're going to have a first name that's longer than 32 characters. You might put it up 64 characters. Most people, you can pretty much say that their first name is going to be less than 32 characters, probably less than 20. In order to save space on your database, you would make that the lowest amount as possible to hold every possible value that's going to be given it. Primary keys are used to identify unique values in the table. And usually I give most of my tables an ID field just so that they'll have a primary key. You can actually use something other than integer values as your primary key, but I'm using the ID field as my primary key here. So we have this database table, so let's add a user to it so that the user can access it. So we'll go to operations. Sorry, no we won't. We'll go to user. Let's go back to the home. Go to web dev, then click on user again. Actually no, let's go back to home. It's like I just woke up or something. Web dev. So now we're in the web dev database. I want to add a user to it. So we go to privileges, add new user. We're going to give this web dev 1 as the username, a host name. We want to make this available to any login from localhost. It's the local machine only. That way people from the outside world can't get into your database directly. Password, we're just going to set this to web dev 1 and retype it. And we want to make sure this grant all privileges on database web dev 1 is checked. We want to grant all on that, so hit go, and it's telling us that we're going to grant these privileges, so hit go again. So now you don't even have to click that last go, I don't think, but I always do just to make sure that the privileges are set. So our web dev 1 database now has a user web dev 1 available to localhost, and that user has access to that database. So I'm sorry this is probably like a boring subject so far, but this is really important information to learn when it comes to web development, because later on this is going to be used a lot. You're going to be in databases a lot. But what I want you to focus on while we're covering these databases and things like that is I want you to focus on learning how to design these databases to meet the needs of your website the best they can. Most of your tables are going to represent objects in the real world. They're going to be like a user object. That's a person that comes to your website. Their data is stored in a user table. Your posts on a blog are stored in a post table. There's a lot of other examples like that, but everything that's kind of like, or most database tables represent entities, and you don't want to duplicate data if you can help it, because then you end up having a problem with data integrity. Like the data is not correct in all places and things like that. So database design itself is a very interesting subject that if you're interested in web development, it's really good that you look at that more in depth. And we're going to look at queries a little bit closer in the next video, and then eventually we're going to get to how to access these databases from MySQL using the PDO, which is the PHP database object. And that should be it. Next video we're going to do some MySQL queries. It's going to be a shorter video. This one was carried on a little long. This is a big subject to try to tackle, and I really haven't even skimmed the surface of it yet. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe.